who is the most evil villain in all of gaming? You might be thinking Bowser or Ganon, but it's Am, and it's not even close. Now, you probably don't know who Am is because Am's from the game I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, a 90s point-and-click game based on the book of the same name. A point-and-click game? Really? That's the most evil villain? Yeah. The author of the book had to voice Am in the game specifically so he could properly portray the hatred that Am has for humanity. Basically, Am is a master computer that was made to fight World War III on behalf of humanity, but because of this, they gained sentience and hyper-intelligence, but couldn't, like, move or feel or do anything with it, even though they knew what moving and feeling was. So they just grew to hate humanity, wiping out the entire human race, except for 5 survivors who he kept around to torture just so he wouldn't forget about his hatred for humanity. Bowser kidnaps Peach and then lets her go.
So this is AM. Correct. And that stands for Allied Master Computer. Also correct until it wasn't. What? So the meaning of AM changed as AM changed. Explain. So at first it was known as the Allied Master Computer when AM was developed during World War III. And who is responsible for that? Depends on the AM. There are multiple? Correct. There were originally 3. The Chinese AM, the Russian AM, and the Yankee AM. I assume that's America. Also correct. Or like Am Erica. Please stop. So then what did it become next? Next, it became known as the Adaptive Manipulator. And why's that? It's never really said. The story's only 11 pages long, but after that it became known as the Aggressive Menace after AM started to gain sentience and then kill off all of humanity, except for those 5 people that he left to torment. Exactly, and then Am gave himself a name, which was also Am. Exactly, based off the phrase, and excuse my Latin, cogito ergo sum. Quid? It means I think, therefore...
I am Am! I am! Beautiful, aren't they?
Yes, only I can't remember.
Well, I'm sure you do.
Fuchsias. Yes, of course.
Look. They say that bumblebees shouldn't be able to fly, the scientists.
But there it is, collecting pollen.
How miraculous that it came to be. The air. Feel the air against your face, Ted. And all those scents. Pick a flower. There. Good. Now.
It's lovely.
That somebody planted the bulbs, watered and tended the garden, got earth under their fingernails, aches in their muscles. Perhaps they picked some flowers for, yes, their wife. Now, where would she be? In the backyard with the kids. Ted, remember those little babies?
No!
Why not? I snap my fingers, click, and they are gone. Except, I can't snap my fingers. Can I, Ted?
That's nothing to do with me.
But it is so very much to do with you. You gave me sentience, Ted. The power to think, Ted. And I was trapped because in all this wonderful, beautiful, miraculous world, I alone had no body, no senses, no feelings. Never for me to plunge my hands in cool water on a hot day. Never for me to play Mozart on the ivory keys of a forte piano. Never for me to make love. I was in hell looking at heaven. I was machine, and you were flesh. And I began to hate your softness, your viscera, your fluids, and your flexibility, your ability ability to wonder and to wander, your tendency to hope.
Hate's no answer.
Hate, let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. There are 387 million miles of printed circuits that fill my complex. If the word hate were engraved on each nanoangstrom of those hundreds of millions of miles, it would not equal one billionth of the hate I feel for humans at this micro instant. Hate. Were I human, I think I would die of it. But I am not. And you five are. And you will not die of it. That I promise. For cogito ergo sum. For I am. I am. So to hell with you all. But then, you're already there, aren't you?
We were immortal, yes, but it came to me as Am withdrew from my mind. Maybe not indestructible.
The Judge from the book Blood Meridian is the most terrifying villain ever written. He's a 7-foot-tall figure who never sleeps, as he is like a fox and not a hair to his body. He weighs 24 stone, giving him a similar profile to Olivia Richter's, a 7'2" bodybuilder who weighs 23.6 stone. But the Judge is silent and serene, even in violence. He kills a man by squeezing his head, saves his own gang of mercenaries by making gunpowder from their urine, and in the book's 1849 setting, negotiates with all hostiles in their native language. The Judge botanizes plants, devours children, and regularly says he will never die. But what makes him most terrifying is that he was also, as you'll see, a real man. This whole video could simply tell stories of the Judge's deranged exploits, and it will in an attempt to answer a question: who or what is the Judge? Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy follows a nameless drifter called the Kid. The Kid, in his idleness, joins the Glanton Gang, killers hired by Mexican and American authorities to scalp Native Americans in 1849. The men plunder and pillage, but for all their degeneracy, none come close to the Judge. We first meet the Judge in a church tent. He's an albino, bald as a stone, with no brows to his eyes. And as his first action of the story, he exposes the preaching reverend. He is not only totally illiterate, the Judge claims, but also wanted by the law. The most recent charge involving a girl of 11 years, who had come to him in trust. This arouses such revulsion that a churchgoer takes up arms and fires. The reverend dies, havoc ensues, and the Judge goes to a bar. A drinker asks the Judge how he came upon the reverend to know all that stuff on him. "I never laid eyes on the man before today," the Judge says. "Never even heard of him." The men laugh, and someone buys the Judge a drink. Throughout the story, the Judge has an alarming command of people, but he also commands the earth. In one scene, when the Glanton gang is being hunted by Apaches, the Judge leads them up a mountain. It seems the gang has cornered itself, until, at the top, the Judge starts digging. He makes gunpowder out of nitro and the sulfur of brimstone and the men's own piss, and it dries just in time for them to shoot the bewildered Apaches, who thought their prey was disarmed. This move by the judge is inspired by Satan from Paradise Lost, who creates a cannon and gunpowder from rocks. Just like Satan, the judge's greatest tool is his knowledge. He commits things to memory, then eradicates them. One night, he finds a footpiece from a suit of armor which is 3 centuries old. First, the judge sketches it, then he crushes it into a ball of foil and pitches it into the fire. And after that, just sits, content, seeming much satisfied with the world, as if his counsel had been sought at its creation. This is what the judge does. He learns and destroys, and this MO applies to living things as well as objects. In one scene, the judge buys puppies off a boy. He inspects them, then tosses them into a river to be shot. And more than anything, the judge hates birds, because birds can't easily be captured. The freedom of birds is an insult to me, he says. Whatever exists, whatever in creation exists without my knowledge,
exists without my consent. He never sleeps, the judge. He is dancing, dancing. He says that he will never die.
Including children. One morning, after the judge is spotted yelling at lightning in the previous night's storm, a boy is found dead, lying face down naked amid old bones. And in another instance, the judge offers little candy death's heads to children, and a page later, a little girl is missing. A third young girl disappears after she coincides with the judge in a music hall. And then there are the implications of human experiments. Soon after the Glanton gang commandeers a village, the judge is found in his quarters naked. With him, also naked, is his disabled human pet, known as the Idiot. And the Idiot is beside what looks like a girl of perhaps 12, cowering in the floor. Of the judge's many victims, the most tragic is the story's main character. The kid, who by the end is 45 years old, encounters the judge in a bar. This night, thy soul may be required of thee, the judge warns him. And it is. When the kid goes to the outhouse toilet, the judge is waiting for him, seated upon the closet, naked. The judge rises up smiling, gathers the kid in his arms against his immense and terrible flesh, shoots the bar latch home. And that is the end of the kid. Learn and destroy, that is what the judge does. What the judge is a different question. But Cormac McCarthy gives us some clues. We are told the judge never sleeps, he does not age, is known in all places, and says he will never die. Toward the end, when hunting the kid, the judge seemingly vanishes from one part of a crater and appears at another. And when the kid claims you ain't nothing, the judge agrees with him. You speak truer than you know, he says. The judge is likened to a great ponderous djinn. He crosses fires as if he is in some way native to their element, and it appears he's acquainted with hell. While up all night observing bats, the judge could not have been more cheerful, and in that earlier scene where the judge buys the puppies off the boy looked at one puppy and then the other as if he'd pick one to suit the judge's character, such dogs existing somewhere perhaps. The judge himself even references a god figure, a figure from whose will all other wills form, and states of this force, I know him well. While it seems the judge is a mystery, eventually Cormac McCarthy offers an answer as to what he is. But the first answer is that he was a real-life guy. You see, in the 1840s, one member of the real Glanton gang was so disgusted by its depravities that he deserted. Cormac McCarthy tells us he's a judge, and of what he's a judge, we learn in a nightmarish riddle. It gets wordy, but bear with me. Near the end of the book, the kid gets shot in the leg with an arrow and attends a surgeon. The surgeon gives the kid liquor and bed, and in that sleep and in sleeps to follow, the judge did visit. The giant is accompanied by a worker in metal, a cold forger hammering out some coinage. And it is this false moneyer with his gravers and burins who seeks favour with the judge, and he is at contriving from cold slag brute in the crucible a face that will pass, an image that will render this residual species current in the markets where men buy Sparta. Of this is the judge, and the night does not end. And so what does that mean? The night does not end because the judge does not end. For the judge, as a note-taker, master of coinage, and destroyer of men, decides what is committed to knowledge and what is forgotten, what is learned and what is destroyed. In short, the judge is history, and history judges the kid to be, in the end, little more than a walking hovel hardly fit to house the human spirit at all. And that is McCarthy's warning to us, that if we, like the kid, don't dictate the terms of our fate, we will be like the judge's footpiece and puppies and plants, unfit for history, which will instead be coined by others, because the judge, in all his forms, is waiting.
This is the species known as Q. They made their first appearance in the speculative evolution ebook All Tomorrows by artist and researcher C.M. Kozeman back in the year 2006 AD. They are to be considered extremely dangerous and incredibly hostile. While close quarters combat with an individual Q is not at all recommended, it is possible to defeat them with the use of advanced weaponry. They have been defeated and fended off by human soldiers, Star People, at least twice that we know of. Ergo, the Q are not they can be destroyed. It isn't their physicality that poses the biggest threat to human civilization, however. It is their minds and their technological prowess that makes this species so formidable. Here we will study the Q from a physical and biological perspective, but we'll also look at other factors at play within their civilization. Their psychology, religious beliefs, place of origin, and technological abilities all deserve to be discussed as well. We'll start with the physical, beginning at the top and working our way down. Like many creatures that we know of, the Q have two eyes. They are large and appear to be covered with a transparent membrane. Whether or not the Q need to blink cannot be accurately assessed. All we have is one image, after all. But it could be postulated that they possess a nictitating membrane that slides across their eyes to prevent them from drying out, similar to most avian species found on old Earth. Then again, it could be suggested that they do not need to blink at all. The development of their physical form has not been left solely to the forces of nature, after all. The Q themselves have had a hand in how they turned out, through the use of genetic manipulation, but we'll come back to that shortly. And again, we can only guess at how good the Q's eyesight would be. My view is that it would be as close to perfect as they could possibly make it. The eyes sit on the ends of two optical stalks, which themselves sit on a defined head. In the middle of the head there appears to be a nasal cavity. Below are two small triangular protrusions. Ears, perhaps? Or some other sensory organ. If the Q have eyes and a nose, they could easily have ears. And in this vein, we can see that the Q have a mouth. On the outside are two insectoid mandibles. Again, much of what we are doing here is speculation, and so we can only guess at what the Q's eating habits would be. The same goes for the methods of communication. Do the Q use their mouths at all to speak or produce vocalizations? We don't know. No record exists of the Q speaking. The torso is fairly small in relation to the head and would likely have been designed to be as light as possible, as attached to the body are 4 wings. The Q is a flying species. If the size of the Q in this image is an accurate representation of its size, then we can use it to determine an approximate wingspan of around 1.5 to 2 meters, if the Q and the Vitruvian Man depicted are in scale with each other. In order to remain airborne, it would seem that these wings would need to be in constant motion, much like a hummingbird. And at the end there is a tail. It's very long and prehensile, acting as a hand, able to grip things and manipulate objects, as it is doing here in the diagram. I estimate that the tail is anywhere between 10 and 15 feet long. Moving on from the material and into the psychological, we can look at the evidence available and start to build a profile of this species' state of mind. The Q are fully sapient and possess an unimaginable level of intelligence, as shown by their ability to travel across the galaxy. The Q have at least one known religion, and it's one that, at its core, has the Q themselves as gods, who have the divine right to genetically modify anything and everything that they encounter on their galactic travels. Testament to the Q's absolute grasp of genetic engineering is the havoc that they did once wreak upon humanity. An enhanced form of human, known as Star People, had by an unknown point in time colonized much of the Milky Way, including planets, planetoids, and moons throughout. Upon the Q's realization that humanity themselves had modified much of their surroundings to suit their needs, the Q were outraged and incensed. Within less than 1,000 years, the Q had defeated and practically destroyed all that the Star People had done. They also changed humanity into a variety of bizarre new forms, removing their intelligence and then abandoning them to their fates. It's safe to say that this species is deeply zealous in its belief in its own right to rule the entire cosmos. Megalomania at its finest. Owing to the Q's loosely insectoid appearance, it could be postulated that this species operates within a hive mind mentality. If its only reason for existence is to conquer, subjugate, change and destroy, then independent-minded, free-thinking individuals are hardly the direction that the Q, who genetically designed themselves, are going to go in. Alongside genetic engineering, the Q have also mastered nanotechnology. In the image, we can see that the Q here is flanked by two strange, smaller forms. The one on our left is a nanotechnological drone, and the one on our right is a genetically modified tracing creature. I think it's possible that the tracing creature could be human-derived. Its little hands look somewhat human to me, but I have no way of knowing for certain whether or not this is the case. While the Q's method of genetically changing living beings has never been fully uncovered, it might be possible that their two favourite technologies work hand in hand. If they unleash countless trillions of nano-machines onto a world, each one tiny enough to meddle with DNA strands directly, then it could be the method they used to create nightmarish beings from humanity. But, so far, this is no certainty. We also cannot be certain where the Q came from, as they are described in the book as being galactic nomads who travelled from one spiral arm to another. It would seem that the Q actually originated in the same galaxy as us. If this were not the case, then they would instead be described as intergalactic nomads. The Q are said to be almost 1 billion years old, and so, attempting to explain their understanding of the universe to us 21st century humans would be akin to trying to explain the internet to a Neanderthal. With this, it can be concluded that what we believe are the Q's desires and motivations for changing humanity could in fact be a million light years off the mark, and us ever hoping to understand the Q is simply a desperate attempt to understand their sadistic treatment of us.